It gives you the option to record with AI to the cloud, AI companion. And like I do that at work for some meetings. It's impressive, bro. Right? Like
What does it do?
it transcribes the entire meeting and then it formulates notes with highlights, bullet points, and follow-up tasks.
Hmm.
Fucking wild, dude. And it says who, right? Like, so it knows who's talking, it knows who said what, and it says, yeah, Mike needs to follow up with HR to, get the job description updated. It'll say some shit like that. It's
Hmm.
crazy. It's scary, really, is what it is, right? Like I'm not one that believes that this replaces jobs, right? Like I believe it enhances jobs. It makes my job a lot easier. Like no one needs to transcribe the notes. No one needs to formulate the minutes from the meeting. Like it's already done. Wild.
What's it called?
Well, on Microsoft, it's Copilot and Teams, right? And because Teams is a Microsoft product. So, and it's just the AI drive behind it. And that's
Hmm.
what it does. With Zoom, they said AI companion. So Zoom has their own AI companion similar to Copilot. I could turn it on. I just didn't because I didn't like I like getting the recordings on my computer and then uploading them to YouTube. So, but maybe next week we'll give it a shot, see what it does.
Gotcha.
It's
Yeah. Hey,
wild.
it's nice
Like
to have the so.
it'll say something like Atticus talked a lot of shit and there's no substance to it. That's what it'd say. If I was guessing what AI would come up with from one of our conversations, that's what it would
Mhm.
be. Yeah.
So your Eagles are playing right now.
Yeah, we talked last week, dude. Like, I mean, and it's not just the Eagles, right? Like this episode is overreaction episode number 2, right? Like it's
Okay.
based off of what we've seen from week 1 or the week 1 games of the preseason, right? Like I got what I needed out of last week. I
Do
got to
you
see,
think there's a lot of overreaction going on? Have you seen that?
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Example, JJ McCarthy looked fucking awesome. Had a couple long bombs,
Torn meniscus now, isn't it?
out for the season. See ya. So all that
Sam Darnold's starting for Minnesota now.
yeah. Hey, good for
That's our week one opponent, in fact.
good for Sam Darnold, right? Like if we saw anything out of Minnesota, I think that we saw that they can be explosive, right? And that's without the jet on the field, right? That's without Justin Jefferson playing. And that's it too, right? Like last week, how many starters really played? You know, like if Caleb Williams could be an example. I think that Bo Nix is an example in Denver, right? Like we saw these dudes play well, right? Complete a lot of passes. However, they're not really playing against first team defenses. And are the defenses really scheming the way they would in the regular season, like week 1? I don't think they are. I just don't believe that. I think they're playing the game, but I think they're coaching in a way to evaluate players.
Right. Right.
That's I could be wrong. Who the fuck am I? I'm not a an employee of the Philadelphia Eagles or any NFL team, right? But like I just, there's two things I want to see are the questions that we have about certain players. How did they do? Right? How did they look? Really? And then also, did anybody get hurt? That's all I care about. I may put
Um,
the background though while we're talking.
how about Hassan Reddick has requested a trade from the Jets. And the Jets are like, fuck you. You're staying right where you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trouble in paradise already?
I mean, he may not play all season.
They said that, listen, they're going to penalize him accordingly. He's supposed to be there in uniform. And he has made the decision that I am not happy here. And as of today, he still hasn't reported.
Nah.
Do you think that are you familiar with the issues that he has with the organization?
It's the same issues that he had, and he wanted a new contract with Philadelphia. You know, he wanted more money. You know, and
So do
he
you think that he just had a solid season as a result of some of the pieces that was around him and he's not worth it, or he just simply hasn't done enough on his own to prove it?
no,
I
I
mean, both can be true.
probably a top 5 pass rusher in the league. That's what I think. Right? Like, and is he paid top 5? I don't know, but I know that it's probably not. It's probably outplayed his contract a little bit. You know, I mean, he had a solid season 2 years ago. He had a good season last year. Good enough, right? Like he was consistent. He wasn't getting to the quarterback, like he was just off by a little bit. All right, Kenny Pickett. Um, you know, it's Kenny Pickett. It's
He
just
wearing his gloves?
yeah, of course he is. It's one of them. Of course he is. You know, but this is why I'm not watching. Like Kenny Pickett's playing, Brittany Covey's playing. You know, like
You
these
got
are not.
Gainwell playing. Is Gainwell playing?
Yeah.
You're not a big fan of Gainwell, are you?
No, I like Gainwell, just not a starting. He's nice to come in for a nice little, you know. Okay, we've been dealing with Saquon all day. Oh shit, I forgot about Kenny Gainwell. Right, like he's a good player. He's just not an every down back. And there he is.
You know where I think Saquon Barkley is going to be a tremendous asset for the Philadelphia Eagles. I still don't think the Eagles needed him, but I think that the amount of attention he's going to command on play action is going to just create so many opportunities.
I
I
just
mean, think about a lot of the attention that he commanded when he was with the Giants, and the Giants are nowhere near as talented as a team as the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, and the Giants, there were times where he had the offense looking really good, and it was him, right? It was what he commanded. Like people were like, we need to stop Saquon. And they were so hyper focused on stopping him. And sometimes they succeeded. They would stop him in the backfield. I don't know how many TFLs he's had, but they would stop him. But it would, and then they would just keep pounding on that idea, and that would create all of these opportunities for so many other players to have big games. I think that is going to be huge for Philadelphia.
I don't know where. I don't know who you cover. Like, who are you going to double team on the Eagles? Or you know, you got AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goddard, and Saquon Barkley that are going to be on the field together probably 80% of the time. Who you doubling? Who you covering? And then you got to worry about Jalen Hurts. You know, the one thing that I've seen out of him is it looks like he got his legs back, right? Like
Mhm.
I still think he was hurt last year, right? And I don't think that we're ever going to get the true extent of what that was, right? There's so much other fodder that the league media likes to speculate on that no one's even talking about that. But like there is a significant difference, just eye test on the way that he moves around, whether it's in the pocket or running.
He has he played yet during the preseason or no?
He's not
So
playing.
you're just looking at training camp stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's not playing a day either. So
yeah. I thought that some of your starters would go in for at least a quarter today.
not today. It doesn't even look like the line's in. Maybe they were there
Mhm.
for the first series. Jalen certainly wasn't because he's in street clothes. You know, but no, I don't, you know, I think next week. I think they'll get a little bit of run next week. It's what they did last year. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I think not next year, but the 2026 season, they're going to move to an 18 game regular season
Yeah.
and a 2 game preseason. But I believe what they're going to do is spread the preseason over a 3 week period.
Yeah.
So you'll play a preseason game, off the next week, play your final, off the next week, then the season starts.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to create more joint practice sessions,
yeah.
more possible scrimmages between teams, because how do you truly evaluate the talent that you brought in, the chemistry that you hope to achieve in only 2 preseason games? I don't know that you can effectively do that.
I mean, I think it'll be interesting, but I think I like it better, right? Like we're not seeing them play for the most part. Most teams are not playing their starters for a long period of time, right? Whether it's a quarter, whether it's a half, whether it's a series, whether it's at all, right? They're just not doing it until probably the 4th preseason game. And 4's a lot.
The 4th, there's only 3 now.
Are you sure?
Yeah. There's 3 because they went to the 17 game season, but there is a 4th for the person or the teams that play in a Hall of Fame game.
I thought they still played 4. No, you're right. Just 3.
Yeah.
So it's I like it because it also lines them up, from what I understood, with the playoffs and the Super Bowl being pushed out another week to align it with President's Weekend. So, it becomes President's Weekend essentially becomes Super Bowl weekend, right? And everybody that who works at the Monday after the Super Bowl, I know you and I do, right? But a lot of people call out, right? So I think it aligns better once we get to that level. But to your point, I mean, maybe we see them play a little bit more with just 2 preseason games.
Yeah.
Maybe we
I don't think you do. I don't think you see your starters that much, though. I think it really takes away from that because you have to evaluate your draft picks. You got to evaluate your free agents. I mean, your free agents, often you're not going to have them out there risking getting injured either, right? But chemistry matters, particularly when you're talking about how important it is for your team to operate in a symbiotic manner. That center needs to know where the left guard's going to be and how they're going to respond, as well as the right guard, and who needs to know how the right tackle is going to respond on stunts and shifts.
Yeah.
That's important. And if you don't have time to work together as a unit, that's particularly when you have timing in plays is probably most critical in a game of football. You need 11 people being exactly where they're supposed to be for a play to succeed. And where do you do that? I think for the fans, it's going to be a good thing. I think for the players, they're not going to be happy about it. And honestly, for season ticket holders, you just increase their bill annually by adding another game to what they're expected to purchase.
How's that
Now,
work?
some people will love it.
How's that work?
I'm sorry?
Right? Do you not pay for preseason tickets?
Yeah, but they're half the price as a regular season game ticket.
Okay.
So my preseason tickets, because I have club seats, are $150 each. My regular season game tickets are $300 each.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to make everybody happy anyway, no matter what you do, right?
Yeah.
And there's no exception to this. People are going to feel the way they're going to feel.
I mean, I think we're going to see both sides of it, but ultimately it's 18 games. I don't like 17, right? Like
Just a number, right?
I'm still saying 10-6 sometimes, right? Like that as far as prediction goes. It just feels real, and 10-7 sounds like mediocre, right? Like 10-6, you're a playoff team. But I think what it is now, it's 11-6. That's the
Hmm.
number. Like you got to get to 11 wins to really be secure with, all right, we have a good team and we could do something in the playoffs.
Hmm.
But 18 just makes more sense. It evens out home and away games, and it's just, I think it's just better overall, right? Um, I'd like to know what that 18th game is going to be, though, right? Like what kind of format they're going to bring to the table, from a scheduling perspective.
Hmm.
Me, for one, I think the Eagles should play the Steelers every year. It's a Philadelphia, it's a Pennsylvania game. They should play each other every year. I think the Giants and the Jets should play each other every year.
Don't forget Buffalo.
Yeah, well, I'm going to forget Buffalo. I mean, is that really New York? You know, it might as well. It's almost Canada, so
Damn there.
I mean, you can't forget about Buffalo, but like the rivalry is crosstown. You know,
True that. Subway Series, they call it in New York.
yeah,
And it's the Battle of Pennsylvania between Philly and Pittsburgh.
yeah, yeah. We could shut up all those Steeler fans every year. Great.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, am I right? Speaking of Pittsburgh, am I hearing this correctly? Is Justin Fields getting the start over Russell Wilson?
Russell Wilson's injured, right? And unless Russell Wilson looks god awful in regular speed, Justin Fields did not look. He fouled the ball twice, dude, in preseason, twice, and he's had an issue with that, right? Which, I mean, should be easy to correct because it happened in the center exchange both times. One time the center took responsibility for it, but it's still a problem, right? And if the common denominator in historically is Justin Fields, like that's a problem but outside of that, he is pretty amazing, dude. Like he's an athlete, but I don't see him getting the start over Russell if Russell looks.
Actually, I'm reading a post right now. It says Russell Wilson will get the start.
Yeah, yeah. And when you do the numbers, dude, Russell didn't have a bad season last year. He played for a bad team. He played for a
Very
bad
interesting to
team.
see if he resurrects his career. And if he does, hats off to Tomlin and the front office in Pittsburgh for seeing value in a guy who a lot of the league gave up on, and particularly given how much of a heist he committed in Denver. It
Yeah,
wasn't necessarily his fault. Hackett had a lot to do with that, right?
right.
So, like the whole system was just an epic tragedy for Broncos fans. I mean, the Broncos have been struggling to get their bearing ever since. I mean, they had one hot flash with Tim Tebow since Peyton Manning, right?
I mean,
And after that, what have they done?
can you even call that a hot flash though, right? Like, I mean, they had a defense.
They had Osweiler, and listen, the hot flash was him dropping that dime against the Pittsburgh Steelers to win that game. That was the hot flash. And people were screaming from the rafters, that's the Tim Tebow we were looking for. It was all a setup because Tim Tebow was the most mediocre Heisman winning trophy quarterback I think I ever saw in the NFL.
I mean, he's the consummate example of a great college football player. Like he is one of the best all time college football players. right? So was Vince Young. So was Reggie Bush, right? All-time great college football player. Just doesn't translate to the NFL, right? It's just, and I mean, I don't think that's his fault, right? But he's not a good quarterback, right?
No,
He had one hell of a pass, though. I mean, you got to take it, right? Just
yeah,
a miracle play, but that's his NFL career. That's it right there. You know,
yeah,
sucked for the Steelers. Just sucked.
indeed, indeed.
I'm just trying to
So,
think of all the things that stood out around the league before we get into our teams. But
mhm,
I can't, I, I think the Patriots trading Judon is pretty big news.
mhm. He went to the Falcons, right?
The Falcons, and it's almost like the Falcons think they're playoff ready, right?
Hmm.
That's wild to me.
Let me take a look at.
He's an all pro line. He's an all pro player, and they picked him up. What's going on?
So you've got Kirk Cousins. Hold on a second. You got Kirk Cousins, Bryce Young. What's the kid's name? Baker Mayfield. And
Stroud,
Derek Carr, right? These are your quarterbacks out there in the NFC South.
NFC South. Yeah,
I don't. I'd say at this point, the the quarterback you can count on the most in that division has to be Kirk Cousins. And I think what they're doing is they're looking to make sure that they have the best chance at winning the division. I mean, they got a stud running back, they got a reliable quarterback. Their defense isn't too bad. I don't know what their offensive line looks like. I honestly haven't followed the Falcons too much, certainly not in preseason. But I mean, and they got a hell of a tight end, and Kyle Pitts is still out there. Like they've got some weapons.
well, I like Drake London a lot.
Drake London.
I like Darnell Mooney. I think is a good pickup for them at wide receiver.
Mm,
So they have some
mm.
weapons, right? And I think their line is pretty solid. I don't know about top 10, but I think it's pretty solid. And I think their defense is pretty solid too. Uh I will say that Kirk Cousins being, yes, I think you have to give him the nod, but like I still like Baker for some reason, right? Like I think Baker is an asset for Tampa Bay. Um, we'll see what happens with it. He got into a longer deal, so we'll see what happens, right? But like, I don't think I don't think he falls off, right? Like I think that's a good solid quarterback for Tampa Bay. But back to the Falcons with Judon, and then they signed Simmons today too.
They did. They
So
did. I would say about Baker is in those moments when you need your quarterback to be clutch. Baker probably gets the nod over Kirk, but it's not all Kirk's fault.
no,
Because Kirk has performed well. Like in the playoff game that the Vikings lost to the Giants in 2022, that was not Kirk Cousins' fault. That was a putrid sieve of a defense that the Vikings had. They just gave up touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. And as much of a Cinderella ride as it was for the Giants were not a better team than the Vikings.
right.
Their their defense outplayed Minnesota's defense when it counted. And that should not be considered an indictment on Kirk Cousins, but he's the quarterback. So he's the one that's going to get all the praise when you win and all the shame when you lose. Now, meanwhile, I think wasn't it the Buccaneers who beat the Eagles last year in the playoffs?
Oh yeah,
Baker Mayfield. He had a game
had a game
against a good defense.
Yeah, had that deep pass late in the game, which but I mean, yeah, they beat the Eagles. And not taking away anything from the Buccaneers, but they played a really disturbed team, right? Not firing on any cylinders,
Right.
But
like you said, at that point, Jalen Hurts was probably playing injured also.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Injured, distraught, disconnected. The team was just disconnected. Like, I was at the Eagles Giants game on Christmas, right? So this isn't even the playoffs. And the Eagles won that game barely. But just the body language of sitting, like, I was front row. So I'm pretty close to the field.
I don't think I knew you were at that game.
Yeah, body language was horrible. Horrible. And I'll say this too. Eagles were up like 21-3 or 7 or whatever it was at halftime, and then wound up winning the game by like a field goal. And the reality, like, a big shift was Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor came in, and the Eagles defense was not prepared for that type of quarterback. Like, he was just way better than Joey Bag of Donuts at, Tommy DeVito, who you got playing quarterback, right? Like, he completely different. Like, DeVito couldn't do shit. And then he got hurt, or they pulled him, or whatever happened. And Tyrod Taylor came in, and he legit was lighting up the Eagles defense.
Let me tell you something. Tyrod Taylor is so underrated. Oh my God. That man is a very good quarterback.
Yeah.
And the Jets are lucky to have him, because if Aaron Rodgers should go down, and there's a possibility, not that I wish that on anyone, there's a possibility that he will. If he should go down and Tyrod has to step up, they won't miss a beat.
No,
Now, he's not Aaron Rodgers, but he's a very capable quarterback.
Not only that, he is there another quarterback in the league that has had worse luck when it comes to injuries?
Ugh.
Yeah,
Tyrod Taylor. He got poked in the lung. Oh, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy. I don't know what happened. Like, in Buffalo, I don't know what his injury was, but like, he got hurt, and then that just opened up the door for Josh Allen, right? And then he goes to the Chargers, where he's supposed to start, even though they drafted Herbert, and then he gets his lung punctured by their own medics.
He was somewhere else before that, though. I think he was in Houston for a year.
Is he Houston or Cleveland?
Was it Cleveland? He was somewhere else before the Chargers. And you're right, he was supposed to be the starter, and it didn't work out because he was injured.
He was. He was drafted by the Ravens in 2011. I don't know what happened there. Played with them until he went to Buffalo. Did he start in Baltimore? He had to have. Then he went to Buffalo, and Buffalo thought he was their quarterback. And then he got hurt there. And then he went to Cleveland for a year. Then he went to the Chargers. Then he went to Houston.
Okay.
And then
so we both guessed the right teams, but the wrong order. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
didn't
he's
even know
excellent
about. I
backup
mean, I didn't
quarterback.
even know Baltimore. I didn't even realize that one.
Yeah, I didn't either. I didn't either. Now, what I wanted to ask you, I know you have your ear on everything Eagles, and one of the big discussions that came out of last season, even the prior year, was the coordinators
Yeah,
and how they did not fill in nicely. The transition was rough, even from who you guys were working with prior year to last year. And you could see the frustration on the sideline. You could see the frustration from the fans. You could see, I don't know how many points per game the decline was, but it was noticeable that the team was not the same team. Now, bring in Kellen Moore. Let's talk about your offense for a minute. Even though I think you're like me in the sense that the win loss in preseason is really meaningless. You're looking at talent, you're looking at scheme and how your players are operating within the system, right? Because the system doesn't change whether you got your first string in, second string, third string in. They may have a more limited playbook that they're using, but it's still the system. What are you seeing from your OC with the new system that they're using this year compared to where they were at this time last year? Do you feel better?
absolutely. Right. And I think the biggest change is the number of initial sets that change and fluctuate with the offense, right? Like, the Eagles playbook last year, or at least their set was pretty, lackluster, if I could use that word, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
almost as if you could tell what was coming, right? And defenses could predict a lot easier what kind of play, maybe not the exact play, but they know what's happening, right? They could see it coming. But when you start lining people up, Jalen under center, Jalen shotgun, pivot, pistol, wide, full wide receiver, right? Like there's just you don't know what's going to happen, right? So, and I haven't seen it yet, and I don't expect we would in whether it was the first preseason game or today, right? But the motion, what kind of motion they're going to put in, you know, after the initial set, and that's where Kellen Moore really starts to confuse defenses, right? Because now you don't know, and now we know whether you're in man or you're in a zone, and like we can call off things. I'm just excited, dude. Like it's, I and it seems like the entire team has embraced the shift. It's almost as if it's a relief. I mean, just from Hertz's standpoint, if you take him back to college, this is his eighth coordinator in the last decade. That's that's a lot on him as an individual. And to have something that you can embrace that says, yeah, this is an offense,
And
because
and have you heard that from him?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Heard it from him, heard it from Saquon. AJ sounds pretty pleased. Devontae's Devontae. You know,
AJ Brown at the end of the season last year, you could see how uneasy he felt about not just the way the season ended, but you could see it leading up to the end of the season
yeah.
with AJ Brown. He was frustrated.
This
He
is
was
what I
frustrated.
saw on that Christmas game, right?
Mhm.
Like the bread and butter was AJ across the middle on the slant, right? It's almost unstoppable, really. But like it became every play, right? And like he's just getting lit up, still making the play, still making the catch, but he's just like they know it's coming, you know, still can't stop it, but he's getting lit up. And
Became too predictable and you exposed him.
yeah, and he would get up and like really slow walk back to the
You could
back
see that, right? And I saw that.
time. Every time. I was like, dude, get with it. You know, I'm yelling at AJ from the stands. And then I thought about it and I'm like, probably fucking frustrated, man. Like, we're calling the same damn play every time.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you look at Devontae on the other side, and that dude runs some of the prettiest routes I've ever seen, ever. He is just super smooth when it comes to, his ability to run routes and his precision. And it's just fun to watch. He just gets open. Like we talked about it last week. Like his slim frame, I thought was going to be detrimental. I thought it was going to be a defect on his game transitioning to the NFL. But he just runs such good routes that when he does catch the ball, he has space. So he can avoid getting lit up, right? And getting exposed. Like he doesn't get exposed. Where he exposed
Yeah.
himself is him and AJ are both do this. They both go get the ball, and like I've said it for probably a decade that the Eagles they've never had that at the wide receiver position. Like, selling out on the play to get the ball, right? Something that, from our eyes looked like, if they had jumped, maybe they could have caught it. If they dove, maybe they would have got it, right? And you just never saw that effort from the Eagle players, right? But, Jalen trusts his receivers enough that he just puts the ball where they can go get it, right? And they do, right? And it's just fun to watch, But again, it doesn't expose him to that crackback hit, that god awful, I'm coming across the middle and I'm gonna get lit up.
Right.
So, I still think it's a bread and butter play, and I think that having Saquon helps AJ, right? Not be, they can't key on AJ for that. They really can't, even though they know it's a distinct possibility that play's coming. You can't key on that because there's an outlet now, and Saquon can also run routes like a wide receiver,
He's
you
pretty
know.
good.
And I think the other
He's
area
got good hands.
that helps Jalen is, he has consistently gotten better and better as a pass blocker. And the Eagles they haven't had that, right? They'd have to bring in somebody special to do that, right? Like Swift, great running back, not a really good pass blocker, right?
You mean Saquon's gotten better as a pass blocker?
Saquon's gotten better. Swift did not provide that for them. So
Oh,
that's
you said Jalen got better as a pass blocker.
Jalen's gonna benefit from Saquon
Right.
get, he over his career in New York, he's gotten better and better every year at pass protection from
Yeah.
that position. And that's only going to help Jalen, right? Like Jalen hasn't really had that.
Yeah. He had to scramble out of the pocket. But one thing Jalen Hurts has done well, I mean, he does a lot of things well, but one of the things he's done really well is protecting himself as a scrambler.
Yeah.
He knows how to be tackled and how to fall. And we talked about the art of being tackled when we spoke about Devontae Smith last week being such a small frame.
Yeah.
And he kind of reminds me, I won't put him on the same skill level, but he kind of reminds me in his frame, not his overall size, because he's shorter, but like a Randy Moss that was really thin and like a gazelle. Like he can get to where he needs to go. And it's hard to defend a guy that's that quick
Yeah.
and has that much of an ability to get open that quick. That's who he reminds me of. But like I said, a smaller version, a shorter version, but similar traits in terms of their game, and then how thin they are. But you know, I just didn't think he'd be durable. But the kid is just a good human altogether and a good football player. So
Yeah.
and then I don't know, man. Now that you've seen Vic Fangio, his scheme, how he has his players bought into his system. Are you seeing, are you guys in a 4-3 or 3-4 or I think you're a 4-3, right?
I think we're a 4-3. Um,
Feel about Vic Fangio
I
coming in.
I feel pretty good, right? And again, one preseason game, right? Everything we're hearing from the media, from the interviews, post game, pre game, during camp, whatever it might be, we're hearing good things about how the players are receiving Vic Fangio, right? So that's important because he's a different style of coach, right? Like he's not afraid to publicly shame you if it's
Right.
right. Like he will call you out and he doesn't care who you are. And they're okay with that, right? They almost they, not almost, they embrace that, right? Like we need to get better. We need a coach to coach, right? And that's his style, right? Like so he calls you out in a meeting. So what? Like that's okay. That's how you get better. We're adults. We can be okay with that. He's not talking about my mama. Like it's that's not what it is. So they seem to embrace that. And then again, one preseason game in, but what I was looking for was how was Nolan Smith going to look? How was Nakobe Dean going to look? How do the secondary look? I'm more and more impressed with this secondary, right? Like I think that we're overabundant in the secondary, right, which is a good place to be, right?
That's
Because
a great place to be.
somebody might get hurt, and what I saw out of Nolan Smith, it looked like he got his motor started a little bit, took a couple plays. Let's see, there's Kenny Pickett get sacked. Um, took a couple plays, but like he was getting pressure on the quarterback and he looks fast, right? Like that was a good sign to see. Nolan Smith was showing up. You know who else showed up? Was Trotter Jr., right?
Really?
The hatchet looked
Mm.
good, right? Not that he's going to get the start, but like they have a really they got a nice linebacker core too, right? And I put some of that on Devin White, right? I think Devin White, who's younger than I thought he was, he's only 27, right? But he's bringing that veteran leadership, that winning leadership, and the desire to be the greatest middle linebacker in Eagles history. That's his desire, like flat out. And, he has, at least spoken about being in this system allows him to do that, right? Gives him the opportunity to be a shining example of how to play defense. So, overreaction week, right? Not getting too excited, but I saw enough that I feel like there is an improvement from last year's defense.
Well,
Like,
that's certainly a better place to be as opposed to watching your team in training camp and every other minute you're like, what the fuck?
yeah.
You know what I mean? That's definitely a better place to be.
Where are
Any
you?
injury scares on the team this training camp or
What's that?
preseason?
What's that?
Any injury scares or no?
Not yet. I mean, Sidney Brown's still coming back from his injury, so I don't know when that's going to happen. Sorry. And then Cooper DeJean is actually back in practice now from his he had a non-football injury, so he's been on the sidelines until like yesterday. So he's back in pads. He's just doing individual drills. So like everything we've seen doesn't even include him, right? Doesn't even include him as far as secondary and what's happening. They've been really impressed with Kelsey Ringo. James Bradbury, he's the odd man out right now.
Mm.
I think
Bradbury didn't show you guys that much last year either.
no, he dropped off considerably, right? Like it just, he had a really good season, their Super Bowl run year, but he was burnt toast last year.
Right.
Just burnt.
Well, so we might as well just stay on the Eagles. I'm actually enjoying this.
You don't want to talk about
Question for you.
Giants?
No, it's okay. We can talk Giants next week. That's fine.
All right.
Your schedule, which game, maybe there's more than one, have you circled? I'm assuming the Buccaneers is one of them, given what took place in the playoffs last year. But what games or game do you have circled and you like, yo, I can't wait for this one? Maybe the Bengals in October.
So I'm going to the Ravens game in December.
Okay.
So I am really looking forward to that game on December 1st.
Is it because you're going to that game or that's a matchup that really intrigues you?
Baltimore's a really good team,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one, I mean, they have the reigning MVP, right? Let's be clear about that. Plus I have some Ravens fans as friends,
And
and
you went to a Ravens game last year too, didn't you?
was it last year? It might have been last year or the year before. I went to I think it was 2 years ago.
2
Ravens
years ago.
Miami. Early in the season, dude, and it was one of the best games you could have ever gone to.
Mm,
Ravens were up by like 4 touchdowns. Miami came back to win that game.
I
Tyree,
remember that game.
it was insane.
They scored all these points in a flurry in the third quarter, right?
5 touchdowns in the second half.
Yeah,
Five.
I remember that game.
It was amazing. I'll tell you another game. Well, I'm and this is just shit talking, right? There's a couple. I'm not happy about opening up in Brazil. We talked about that last week. I really like the Browns after the early bye, right? Like, so that game is circled. It's super, super important to come out of the bye week, you know, with a win, right? Like they need to win that game. It's at home, it's against one of the best defenses in the league, and also gives me an opportunity to talk a boatload of shit if the Eagles win. Well, I'm going to talk boatload of shit regardless, right?
Of course, as
Uh,
you should.
but like that's the trifecta for me with that game. So I got that game circled. I mean, they follow that one up with the Giants, and that's early. Like
That's very early for your bye.
typically we play the Giants like both games at the end of the season, and that's not happening this year, right?
Now,
It's way more spread out. Um, but that's definitely a game I'm looking at circled. The other one is also in December, and that's the Steelers game. So I mean, I'm just excited about the schedule in general. I think they win against the Packers. I'm not sold on Jordan Love just yet, but that could be a coin flip. Then they got the Falcons, Saints, Buccaneers, Browns, right? So coming out the gate, they could be 2-3. They could be 3-2. They could be 4-1. So it's really important that they come out winning week one. You know, I think they beat the Falcons. It's at home. I know what the Falcons have, but the Kirk Cousins factors does not bode well with Philly fans. Just doesn't, right? Like he has torched Philly historically, except in Minnesota. He did in
yeah,
Washington.
I have another question for you. Early bye weeks, I never liked. I'd rather have a bye week near the end of the season. You've been grinding all year, you're banged up, you could use the break.
Yeah.
Um, but when they move to the 18 game season, you think there should be two byes per team?
I think they're discussing it, and yes, I do. Right? Like I think that I don't think there should be a bye week before week 6. Right? That's number one. Right? Like I think week 4 is way too early, man. That means they got to play 13 straight weeks heading into the playoffs. I don't like that. I think it's a disadvantage. I think it allows them to be, even barring injury, right? You're still banged up. Like, are you injured or are you hurt? That's the question, right? Everybody's going to be hurting by week 17. Everybody. Week 18, rather, you know. So it's not cool, you know. Um, I don't like the quick turnaround after a Thursday night game,
Hate
you
it.
know, or
Well, usually it's not after the Thursday night,
before
it's
the
leading
Thursday.
to the Thursday.
So you play Sunday and then you play Thursday,
Hate
right?
it.
Like, I think they should line up bye weeks, and where if you have a Thursday game, it comes after a bye week. You know, that's really hard to do, right? But I think that, there's smart enough people in the NFL that can figure it out. I'd
Yeah.
like to believe they're smart enough. If there's not, I think that we form a consulting group and send them a proposed package. That's what I think, right? Like, put us on the payroll, please.
Yeah. I'm looking at your schedule and I don't really see a particular section where I feel like, oh, that's a grueling stretch. And then when I think about your roster, depending on how well your coordinators design plays and schemes that work with the personnel that you have,
Yeah.
you could, because injuries are part of the league, you could stand to lose one of your premier players and still, like if you get somebody with a lower ankle sprain, that's a 2, 3 week injury. A high ankle sprain, you might be talking a month or better.
Yep.
You can have somebody out, any one of those dudes, for 2 weeks, maybe three, and still survive well. I mean, because you just got so much depth and so much talent on that team. But I don't see any part of the schedule. Maybe Bucks, Ravens. Let's see. I mean, I don't know. We don't know what you're going to get with the Falcons. You're playing on unfamiliar turf, and I don't think the Saints are going to pose that much of a threat. But then you got the Bucks, the Browns. I'm not even going to consider the Giants until they've proven that they can hang with the Eagles. Then you got the Bengals. What are the Jaguars going to be? Do we have any? Do we have any reason to believe the Jaguars are going to be anything better than the 9-18? I don't think so.
No.
The Cowboys are always tough. I don't know why the Commanders always give you all fits. I don't believe in the Rams anymore. Then you got the Ravens. That's going to be a tough outing. The Panthers are still in rebuild mode. Steelers, Eagles, for whatever reason, y'all always seem to have their number.
Yep.
Commanders, again, I don't know why they match up so well with y'all. That shit's crazy to me. And then you got the Cowboys and Giants. Last 3 weeks are all division games.
Let's just say 3-3 in the division, right? I mean, anything better than 3-3 is golden in my book. Anything less than 3-3, I think the team is better than that, right? So, like, but I'll go 3-3 because it's division, right? So right now they're 3-3, 6 games in. So when you look at the other 11 games, I put a win with the Panthers, I put a win with the Rams, I put a win with the Jaguars, I put a win with the Saints, I put a win with the Falcons, right? So now they're 8-3, right? So that leaves the Packers, the Buccaneers,
You'll
the
beat the
Browns.
Packers.
I think they beat the Packers. So
I think they beat the Bucks too.
there's 10. Browns, it's a home game, but it's top 3 defense in the league. Top 3. The Bengals are already injured. They carted off 2 players this year in
They
practice
did.
today. So I think we beat the Bengals. Right? Then
It depends on what time of the year you're playing them.
Yeah.
But before the 6th game of the season, you'll easily walk the Bengals. You'll dog walk them. After that, I don't know.
So 7th game of the season.
Real close.
You know, coming off of the Giants. I mean, I'm at 11 wins with possibly more,
I can see that.
but I could also see 9-8, which is, I think they go 9-8 if Sirianni just shits the bed, right?
And I think that's where we should end this tonight.
Yeah,
Sirianni, is this a make or break year for him?
absolutely, right. I legitimately think they have the talent to go 13-4.
Okay. Where is the threshold for him? Where is the number of wins that he has to make to keep his game? I'm not talking about where we're still thinking about it. Where is he sent home? Where does his key card get deactivated? And where do they say, all right, we're gonna rock with him, maybe even extend him? Where do you send him home?
Over 11. End of story. Like if he's 10-7, he's gone.
10-7 gone.
Yep.
10 wins will not save his job.
11, and it's 50-50.
Okay, 10 wins make the playoffs, win 2 games in the playoffs.
Okay.
Or is it 10 games, miss the playoffs? He's
10
gone.
games.
Because there's a difference.
He needs to make the playoffs. They need to be in the championship game. End of story. Like if they're not in the championship game, if they go 10-6 and make the NFC championship game, I think he maybe saves his job.
10-7.
But I don't think they make the championship game at 10-7. I think at 10-7, there is something wrong with Sirianni.
I think something wrong with him anyway.
But, yeah, I think that, here's
a maturity level that he's missing.
Of a sideline, basically capo. Big Dom is a capo on the sideline. Like apparently he is the glue that holds that team and locker room together. Right? Like, which is the weirdest fucking thing I've ever heard of. But I think he's been with the Eagles for a while. Like even pre-Sirianni. So,
Right.
Him getting dismissed from the sideline, which I still think was a bunch of bullshit last year. Right? Like, I mean, should he put his hands on a player? Probably not. But was that player in his face? Absolutely. Player shouldn't be in his face either.
No.
And they didn't do shit to the player, regardless. It's really, I've never heard of that dynamic before. So I think that's an X factor. But I still think Sirianni has got to, if they are 10-7, I think there is something off with his vision and the team vision.
Yeah.
I mean, what it really boils down to is Vic Fangio, or not Fangio, Kellen Moore needs to sync up with Jalen Hurts. That's the key, right? And all signs are pointing that way to me right now, right? That they have synced up and they're on the same page.
See, it's not a big ask, but it is a big ask because you pointed out 8 coordinators since he's been in the league. That's a lot. And there's just new offenses usually come with at least a measure of growing pains, right? You're working it in, you're figuring it out. People sometimes miss what page this guy's on, and it sometimes I think it's a lot at stake here, man. It's a lot at stake. I mean, every year it is, right? But when you go from this is your 3rd coordinator, offense and defense in a 3-year span.
Yeah.
3rd year. And going from the 1st to the 2nd year didn't look good. From the 2nd to the 3rd year, it has to look it can't be worse than it was last year. If it's worse than it was last year, everybody's going to want Sirianni's head. Everybody. And you know what happens then? Here's what happens then. The problem with having the amount of talent that the Philadelphia Eagles has is when shit goes wrong, the locker room is quick to lose belief in the coach. Quick, because you got too much talent. There's no reason why that should not be a 12-win minimum, 12-win team. No reason.
None.
That much talent. That with all the work Howie did. Howie is the gold standard of general managers. With all the work he's done, the maneuvering, the managing of the cap, kicking stuff down the road to make sure that we win now.
Yep.
And you don't, you're going to lose the locker room. And then Sirianni's got to go. So that's my thoughts on it. I think you got the talent. You got the team. The X factor is your head coach. That's the X factor.
Yeah, that's the X factor. And I'm just going to say this out loud. I don't think Kenny Pickett is the right choice for backup quarterback. I just don't see it. I didn't see
Could they
it.
not afford to keep Minshew, Gardner Minshew?
Gardner Minshew was going to get he was going to get a contract to start. Like he started in Vegas, right?
He got a bag. Yeah. He got a Minshew bag anyway.
You know, so I mean, he belongs in Vegas anyway, right? Gardner Minshew belongs in Vegas.
He's right at home.
Like that, if there's ever a team that someone should be playing for, that's it right there.
Yeah. Him and Fitzpatrick, right?
I mean, yeah, Fitzpatrick would fit in, but I mean, Gardner Minshew fits in.
He fits in. He is Vegas.
You know, it's just a good look for him.
Yeah, they got billboards up already, don't they?
I bet they do. I'd like to get to Vegas for a game. One, I just like Vegas, right? Like I just, I think it's a fun town. Yeah, I like to hit the tables, but I think there's a shit ton more to do in Vegas than we really realize. Just a lot of entertainment.
Yeah.
I like comedy shows. I like, like I saw Love, the Beatles thing, Cirque du Soleil. That shit was out of control. Food is ridiculously good in Vegas, right? Like every world-renowned chef's got something going on there. It ain't cheap though. It's not cheap.
Yeah, one of the first places my wife and I traveled to was Vegas.
Yeah.
And we may have spent an hour total in casinos.
Yeah.
Everything else was shows, restaurants, sightseeing, and other things to entertain ourselves outside of gambling. And we had a great time.
Oh yeah. It's and now they have the Sphere. So if there's a show there, they're doing I think they're doing, is it September? They're doing a UFC event in the Sphere. That's going to be wild. I don't even know what that's going to look like. I'd love to see a basketball game in the Sphere. That sounds interesting. That Death Star of a stadium for the Raiders just looks like
a couple of my friends went and they were blown away, absolutely blown away. So something that we'll have to put on a list of places we must go.
I'll end with this, and we can talk about it next week or continue, right? One, if we're ever going to talk AFC East, we need to get Gorky on. He put his name out there for that. He'd love it.
Let's make it a point.
Yeah.
Let's make it a point.
Yeah. And then secondarily, have you seen the designs for the Cleveland Browns' new stadium?
I have not.
I mean, it looks like they're opening up a Bass Pro Shop and calling it a football stadium. Maybe not Bass Pro Shop. Maybe Sportsman's Outdoor Shop. Right? It looks like a fucking warehouse.
I see it now.
Like, what is that? Fucking Cleveland.
It's Ohio at its best. That's what it is. I mean, what else could it be?
Yeah.
I think their stadium now is pretty fucking rad, bro. It sits right at the edge of the right on the water next to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Have you been there? I've been there.
I enjoy that area of downtown Cleveland. There's not a whole lot to do. There's a couple really good restaurants that I ate at. Michael Simon's a renowned chef. He's from Cleveland, so he's obviously got a restaurant downtown. Really good food, dude. I'm a bit of a foodie, so I'm always going to enjoy that shit. But I liked, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame right there. I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's nice. And it's a bunch of nice restaurants in that area too. So I don't know. Who knows? It's still Cleveland. We'll see.
Yeah. All right,
All
brother.
right,
Let's
brother.
I'll see when Gorgie's available. If he's ready next week and it lines up, we'll make that happen.
That's a show. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to talk to Gorky again too. The
Yeah.
judge.
The judge. We need the judge. We need to ask
That's
him
right.
about Hassan Reddick and how he feels about that.
Yeah. All right, brother.
All right, man.
Good show, man. Have a good night.
All right.
Catch up next week.
Yep.
All
Later.
right. Peace.